Hello and welcome back to the Higher Vibration Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Sarah Beer, and in today's episode, we are in part 2 with Jamie Nelson on all things Dark Night of the Soul and other void spaces. So feel free to go ahead and listen to this one or check out the first one if you haven't seen that one yet. And enjoy this episode. Very poetic.
Thanks, Sarah.
So
Yeah, it's the Pisces moon.
beautiful.
I'm pretty sure.
Dreamy.
Yeah, we also had that Mercury and Gemini. Just a very
Going with the flow, and the Virgo rising, all the Mercury paired with the dreamy. Yeah.
right.
Well, what would be your advice to somebody who's currently going through it in the void space? Like, what would you advise them to do?
Oh, that's so beautiful. So I would say we really want to lead with compassion, acceptance, and curiosity here. So like for me with the Virgo rising especially, like the primary thing that I experience in this life is self-criticism, right? And that self-criticism creates such a hang up in moving forward. And I notice that when we move that criticism into curiosity, right? When we allow ourselves to get excited and curious about the hang up, it becomes more approachable, right? And then allowing ourselves acceptance, right? It is what it is, right? If I accept this moment, accept that it won't last forever, it makes it just that much easier to navigate knowing that it is what it is, right? It doesn't have to be this way forever. And self-compassion being that most important part, right? Like the void is a human experience, and I don't know that you can be a human without experiencing some degree of the void at some point, without feeling at some point in your life like you're just a little bit lost, right? You just don't know the direction, just a little bit. And so inviting in that compassion, right? I'm having a human experience, right? Right. And for me, it's a lot of forgiving, right? Because I have that trait of perfectionism that comes with the Virgo of like, why are things not going perfectly for me? Why am I not going perfectly? Why aren't things working out? And so just like that compassion of like, we're having a human experience. It is what it is. It's gonna be what it's gonna be, right? And then I really trust myself to get through this. I trust myself to come out on the other side, and I support myself in all the ways that I can. And sometimes that's leaning into love languages, right? What acts of service can I do for myself? What words of affirmation can I give to myself? What like small gifts can I give to myself to just make this day a little bit more memorable, beautiful, like movable, shiftable, right? But so much of being in the void is just holding compassion for all of the parts of you, every piece of you, right, that is in that void, from the smallest child who is terrified to the angsty teen who's just like frustrated, the higher self who's holding you in love and compassion and already has the answers. Like, how can you show up for yourself here, even in the smallest way, and do that?
I could clap, I would clap right now. That was really beautiful. Yeah. Um, yeah. And I gotta listen to that advice again because it is needed. All the love. I feel like you're like the epitome of like a little self-love fairy with your pink hair, talking about just, yeah, self-love, compassion, own all the parts of yourself. Yes. Yeah.
It's hard to maintain like internally as a human, right? But I think like I built my platform on authenticity, self-love, acceptance of self, and acceptance that the self is not perfect. And I think that's because, it's where a lot of the wounding is from, right? A lot of the wounding is expecting myself to show up as this ideal version. I think so much beauty can happen when you release the perception of who you think you're supposed to be and allow where you are right now to be okay. right?
100%. Yeah, it's like, what if the ideal version of you is who you are actually right now? Like, what if right now you were actually perfect and you're just like overthinking everything?
That's so beautiful.
Every Virgo rising needs to hear this. You're already perfect right now. Like, right now, you are perfect in this moment. That is it. Your brain's just overthinking. Okay. Yes.
I love that. When I heard this quote one time that brings me comfort occasionally, right? Which is that like as you're a guide on the path to others, you're not meant to be perfect because others can't relate to perfect, right? You're meant to be at a stage of healing that someone else can relate to. And what a relief that is that we're not supposed to be showing up here as like some perfect entity, right? That even as healers we're allowed to have this space that is imperfect
Yeah, we
and
got to
as it
redefine
should
it.
be. Yeah,
Yeah, redefining perfect as imperfect. Like, what if being who you are right here in this moment is exactly who you're supposed to be in this moment? And the healing never ends. So it's not like, oh, I'm one day going to be this perfect healer who has everything down. That's not, we never finish healing. That is like, I feel like the only real truth of this reality, other than death, is that you are always going to be evolving and shifting. Like, that is the only constant is change, right? So, like, with
I
that,
love that perspective so much.
yeah. It's it's just we are change, even if we don't like change. If you have any kind of Taurus energy, you don't want things to change. But that is life. It is what it is. We are supposed to be present in the change and mindful as we watch it. And that's where the Buddhism keeps coming back into play for me is what is it, the law of non-attachment. The less attached you are, but still holding unconditional love for it, the better your life experience is because you suffer less, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How can we let go of things with grace?
I think that's my greatest point of Delulu, right? Is that when things get like too overwhelming, right? I just resort to it is what it is. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. Like I'm gonna have observance that I don't have control over this moment, right? And I'm gonna release that expectation of myself, right?
That's a
My
healthy
most
Delulu. That's a healthy one. I like that. That's a good delusion. That's a good one.
Thanks. Sometimes it's bypassing a little bit. Like, my roommate will be like, "Are we going to acknowledge this?" And I was like, "It is what it is. It's going to be what it's going to be, right?" It can be a little bypassy, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, right, it just offers that little bit of comfort where like I don't have to control this, and I don't have control over this.
Yeah. What's that Pisces moon? I'm just flowing. I'm just gonna go with the flow.
It's a
Um,
constant struggle.
I
The big
love
three.
Yeah, when we get together and we're just like talking and it's like, what do you think about this? And I just like fully embrace whatever delusion you want to live in and you embrace whatever delusion I want to live in because when water signs get together, we just reinforce delusions. Or
Absolutely.
like, should you stop talking to that person because they didn't do X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, yeah, if that's what you feel, then no, you don't need to talk to them. And it's like a logical person be like, maybe you should rethink your actions. I'm just over here like, if you feel that, you do what you feel. So sometimes it can be probably a little unhealthy, but whatever.
There is an aspect of water signs that is enabling. We don't have to sugarcoat that. Like, if you're a water sign, there is an aspect of you that is enabling. And we may work really hard to cover it up, right? But like, there's this little magical mystical part of the psyche that's like, just go with it. Just flow with it. Just
We're just
just
gonna
just
flow.
go.
It's fine.
Right.
I feel like
And
air has that too, though. Air is like, okay, on to the next, whatever, non-attachment, the masters of non-attachment, really.
absolutely. Like water is interesting, right? Because water can like flow in this like extremely hard space and be this damaging, like chaotic. I guess air is the same way, right? We can have a whole air storm. What is an air
A
storm called?
hurricane, a tornado,
Tornado.
whirlwinds. Things that
Right.
fit.
But we can also have these little gentle breezes and these little trickling creeks and ponds, right? Um, I think air and water have a closer tie than we let on.
Yeah, it's interesting because fire is more chaotic. It doesn't really follow a pattern other than what can I burn and offer light. And then you have earth, which is like I am the ground. And but the ground can also, I guess it moves slowly though. It's not this flowing force, and there's nothing about the earth that's a flowing force. So yeah, water and wind are capable of flowing better than the other signs. It's an interesting
Well,
thought.
it's like we have that ground, which is a container for the water a lot of times, right? It can be a vessel for the water. But I think that like the beautiful contribution of air to water signs is that like it can either like gently caress or like fully hype up that water's path, right? And so like we have to be careful with air signs, right? Because we're either going to get that like gentle movement, that like that nurturing there, or we're going to find ourselves like in an overly hyped up situation, which can be beautiful, can be chaotic and destructive.
Equals water spout. Enters the water spout that becomes a tornado. Yes. We can have a whole other episode just about the dynamics of astrology, which will be really
Oh,
fun.
we should. I would love that.
Yeah.
That would be so fun.
That'll be a fun chat for everybody who likes astrology. That will be something we do in the future because we can just rant about that for like hours.
That was a fun little segue, by the
Yeah.
way.
By the way, contemplating air and water elements. It's very water of us to do that. Yeah, the creative theatrics of analyzing anything and everything and making it poetic in the process.
Absolutely.
That is the specialty of water signs. We can make it dreamy, talk about void spaces and subliminal, awful situations, and make it sound like, oh, here's the hero's journey. Isn't it beautiful? Goo into butterfly.
Where would life be without suffering though? Like I hate it. I don't want to live here. I don't want to move into suffering, right? But
Yeah.
like how would we learn lessons? How would we shift and evolve if there was not some catalyst, right? And it helps sometimes believing that there's a deeper meaning. Sometimes it's hard to I mean, cutting myself off here. Sometimes it's hard to like believe that there is a deeper meaning. But like if life were easy, it would be the spirit world. Like I really do kind of resorting back to that statement I made in the beginning. I really do think we signed up for a degree of suffering here because we know that that's how the soul changes and evolves and shifts.
Earth school. We are in Earth
Earth school.
school. This is what we
Yeah.
came here for. And while we're talking, what came up for me is thinking about how, like, gratitude and appreciation are the secret spices of life that make us appreciate all the things. But really, though, it's like if we can be present, I'm thinking, like, if I'm sitting in this moment, like, how would I deal with suffering? And it's like, well, the more I appreciate everything I have in this moment, the more that that lifts, you know? And that is kind of, I
Mhm.
feel like, the secret superpower for anybody who's really going through a dark, debilitating time is to focus really, really hard on all the things you already do have going right for you. Even if you're like, well, what is it? It's like, okay, well, you have a bed, you're breathing. Maybe you have functioning eyes. I don't know. Maybe you have functioning ears. Maybe you have two arms and two legs. Not everybody has that, and you have food that you can eat, and you have clean air that you can breathe, and you sleep maybe decent at night. Like there's so many things we can think about that are little and we take for granted every single day that if we start appreciating them, I think changes everything, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Wholeheartedly. There have been a lot of times when like I return myself to my breath because it's the only thing that I have within my own control, right? It's like what can I control? Well, you can control your breath, right? And it's like like the breath too is something that can never be t taken from you until you're no longer here on this plane, right? So it's the one thing that we like always have access to. So like along that same line, like sometimes I do find comfort just sitting with that breath and being grateful, right? Noticing like, wow, this breath is sweet, it's free, it's life-giving, it's life-affirming, right? And how wonderful that I get to experience it. And that even that one breath is a gift. Um, it is a perspective shift. It's hard to remember that when you are in the pits, though,
which is why we're
right?
talking about it here.
I'm
Yeah.
like, take the breath, right? Get me out of this pit.
Take the breath. Yeah. There's what was it? I just had a really good point and it just left. Never mind. Okay, maybe it'll come back.
When it
Um,
circles back, let me know.
I'll let you know. It was about the suffering and getting out of it, but it'll come back to me. Anyways, I also think it's important for like I've been calling it like future daydreaming kind of like daydream journaling on like what are all the ways things can go right for you? You know, like what are things that can go
Mm.
right for me? What does that feel like? And like how you can train your energy to start being in that place instead of you know, the other spaces. Although it's also has to be done in a way where you're not acknowledging the fact that you're in the void, you know, it's done in a way of just like I'm excited for what's to come whenever it's time for it to come versus I'm trying to force this to come. Two different vibes. Um,
Right. No, that's a very yummy experience that you're bringing to the table, like a very sensory, delicious, tactile, beautiful, warm experience. But I'm also like, is she describing manifesting? She's describing manifesting,
yes.
right? Where
Yeah.
you're like, what is it that I can paint beautifully in my life and believe in and bring into existence even in this moment? And I was like, ah, manifesting.
It is manifesting. I guess that's the term. I don't ever like feel like I never put it in a box. It's just kind of like what do you want to create? I think I had a hard time for myself with like the term manifesting for a while because I had this
Hmm.
app I downloaded where it's like you use your own voice to say the affirmations and then you would just listen to it in your own voice, which is a really cool theory. But I did that
Hmm.
like every day for months and nothing ever came true. And I was like, what is this bullshit? Why doesn't it work? And then I realized that actually what it's about is how you feel in your body and how you're feeling is
Mm.
actually the magnet, not just what you're saying. Saying is spells are powerful, saying is strong, but it's the feeling, the emotion that invokes the energy that you are calling in. So for anybody who needs some,
Yeah, absolutely. That emotion pulling in the law of attraction, and then how aligned action is the next step there, right? So if I'm wanting this beautiful life where I enjoy being out in nature, well, then I'm going to allow myself to be out in nature, even if it's on my back porch, right? So, like,
Mhm.
I do agree with you that manifesting, the whole terminology has gotten a really bad rep. Recently,
Yeah.
it has turned into one of those like very cliche,
Bypass
like
reality. Dream it.
yes, those buzzwords that like even sometimes I'm like, oh, that's great for you, and I believe in it, but also I'm cringing.
It's funny. I was also talking about this on the last episode with Chase. We were talking about this fine line between manifesting and just spiritual bypassing your life. There's a fine line, like where you're constructively being a part of the co-creative process and where you're trying to manhandle existence while doing nothing other than just wishing it into existence, which maybe some people can do, you know, but I don't know if that's the majority.
Right, right. Or that line between manifesting and delusion or manifesting and lying, right? Like,
How are you
like,
reinforcing your delusions with your manifestations? Yes, we know this one very well. This is something we are schooled in. We could be teachers in
right,
this.
right. So
Yeah.
interesting. I'm gonna have to listen to your previous podcast now. I'm very curious what you guys chatted
It's
about.
great. It's great. We're talking about escaping, not the word, that's not the word I'm using. Leaving Scientology and the things that that entails while also his life journey, which is very fascinating. It's like finance bro meets spirituality and, awareness of emotions. It's a great one.
I do
It's
remember you kind of briefly telling me about this. I like the correction on word choice, right? Because words are very important. Like,
they
still
are
on that
important.
manifesting Delulu language, words are
Yeah.
spells, and the energy of a word brings a lot of baggage with it. So I,
Yes, which brings me to what I remember that I wanted to say before.
oh, good. Tell me.
The magic of the phrase reframe. I love
Oh,
that word so much that you introduced me to with all of your psychology wisdom, and you would be like, Sarah, what a beautiful reframe of this traumatic situation you went through, and you just made it sound better. And I was like, I like that word. That's what that's called. You're like, yes.
yes. Yeah, we can absolutely talk about reframing. And this comes from my therapy toolkit, right? From cognitive behavioral therapy. I tend to be an eclectic therapist to begin with, so just like pulling different things that I like from all the different places and being like, what's gonna work best here? But I think reframing our experiences, reframing our word choices, reframing in this experience meaning like seeing it through a new lens, right? And allowing multiple things to be true at once, right? So I'm often saying with my clients, like, oh, I appreciate you sharing that experience. And while the feeling that we're having here is really valid, would it be okay to reframe it in this way? Would it be okay to look at it through this lens? Um, and I do think, Sarah, that you have a beautiful way of taking a situation and looking at it through just like this lens of love and compassion and positivity. It's one of the things that I just deeply enjoy about your
Oh,
energy, how you'll
thank
be like, ah,
you.
this horrendous thing happened, and look at how beautiful it was because it sparked this like experience. And I think that when we're able to reframe those thoughts and reframe those experiences, what we're doing is we're creating magic in our daily life where this like horrendous thing is somehow a little bit more approachable, right? A little bit more tactile, available.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I feel like it's the alchemy, right? It's the alchemizing of shit situations and how do you make this into something that holds value to you? And also I think that's something in the void space that it taught me and to help me strengthen that. It's like, okay, well, everything has value. Everything has meaning that we assign to it. Because essentially, it's like almost like everything is meaningless, which is both a beautiful and kind of scary concept. But it's all about consciousness wants us to figure out what do we assign meaning to, what matters to us, and what we believe, therefore, is. Not everybody might agree with that thought, but that's my personal thought. And so we assign whatever we want energetically to a situation. So we have the power to take control over how we want to look at and see something. Of course, that can go down a delusional tailspin, sure, but it can also be empowering and taking the power back in a situation that was really awful for you. If you want to try to seed something positive within it and how it helped you be stronger. Hence this whole podcast, actually.
Right, right. Well, and I think like yes, it's a mental effort, but it's also like biological, right? Because your brain believes what you tell it, right? So if you lie to your brain and you're making up a situation, your brain's gonna believe that. Or your brain's job is also like to protect you and to save you from things. So like it's really important to examine the information that you're giving your brain because your brain is going to participate in a solution focused behavior. So if you're asking yourself like these shitty questions like what's wrong with me? right? Your brain's going to come up with 100 reasons of what's wrong with you. But if you're asking your brain questions like, how do I help myself? How do I nurture myself? How do I share compassion for myself? Your brain's going to come up with the solutions there. And the ironic thing about the brain is that it's a machine. It's just handling the algorithms that we're giving it. So if we're giving it these like kind of bullshit algorithms, lying to it, doesn't matter if it's true, the brain is going to believe that. It's going to move forward with that as the new knowledge, which is why that aspect of reframing becomes so important.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think about like I used to be a really negative person when I was a kid, like super negative, just beating myself up real dark. And the thing that I heard was like you can rewire your synapses. And the way you do that is every time you have a negative thought, a criticism, a judgment, whatever, that you have to then create a positive thought with it for every single thing. So every time you thought something negative or you judged or whatever it is, you then had to create a positive, something positive about that exact same thing. And when you really practice that on a daily basis, it's really hard at first, but it starts to become natural. And that's how I think I actually trained myself to do those reframes, was as a way to reprogram the brain into seeing the good in all things and just about everything. There's a few exceptions to that rule. But for most things, there is some kind of positive that can be found. And if you do that every day, you can retrain yourself, and your brain to actually see that. Like what is it? The phrase where you're thinking about a red car, so you see more red cars. If you're thinking about yellow cars, you're going to see more yellow cars. So if you're thinking about a lot of negative things, you're going to see a lot more negative things and hype yourself up in a negative way. If you're thinking about positive things you're grateful for, blah, 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 you're going to see more of the blessings. So that
Yeah,
reminder.
absolutely. Absolutely. And just like biologically, right, the thoughts that we are having create these neurological pathways that our brain gets accustomed to taking. So as humans, we're actually on autopilot for about 85% of our day, right? A little bit more, a little bit less, whatever. Right? But what we're doing that in that 85% of like unconscious time is we're following those neural pathways that we've set. Right. And those neural pathways are things like I'm not good enough, I don't deserve good things, or whatever thought pattern that we've been marinating on that we've been developing as a highway in our neural system. And so it does take that dedicated time, effort, and energy to create a new scenic highway in your brain, right? That's like, well, maybe I do have worth, right? Or maybe life can be beautiful. And the more we practice that scenic route, the more we are dedicated to taking it, the more we get off that highway of negative thought, the more likely that is to start becoming our automatic pathway. But it takes that practicing and reconfiguring those highways.
Beautiful. Yes. And as you were talking about that, I was like, ooh, this is a beautiful segue. Um, so we're talking about the neural pathways and how we entrain ourselves into these patterns and all of these things, which makes me think about how in today's society, due to the instant gratification of everything and the constant dopamine of our phones, TV, all the things, and how that is affecting our neural pathways right now, especially with like comparison being the thief of joy kind of thing. And it's like now more than ever, we need to really be mindful about like our consumption of everything in our life, from our thoughts to the TV to our phones, specifically our phones, social media in general, and being more aware and cognizant of how that is making us feel and how that's affecting us so we can get real on like what steps we need to take to, shift these things that are clearly causing harm. I think there should be discussion on that. What do you think? What do you think about that?
That is an excellent question, and I feel like it is really present to our lived experience, right? We live in a day and age right now where everything is so accessible and like we kind of discussed earlier on this podcast, we're on that autopilot for 85% of our day. So a lot of the things that we're consuming and we're consuming all day long, like information, just different things. And what's happening is our brain is just on autopilot believing everything that comes in, right? And because of the way our algorithms are set up on our online profiles, like a lot of the information that comes in is aligned with the values that we've kind of preset, we've kind of put in there. But it does take that like active decision, that active conscientiousness to tune in to what is being shared with us, right? And for me, this looks like a lot of unplugging, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I definitely like do participate in the TikTok scrolling, the dopamine hits, right? But to move through this, to heal through this, it takes that active decision to unplug, to show up for yourself in conscious moments, to ask yourself, what do I think about this? Right? I've heard this information, right? And how do I feel about this information? How does it resonate with my being, right? As opposed to just kindly, blindly accepting it as a truth. And I think that in this, like, particular political climate in this particular capitalistic society we live in, right? Like it's just so easy to eat, consume, devour other people's ideas about life, right? And just internalize that and claim that as your own. But this is again where I'm going to invite in that curiosity, right? Do I believe this? Why do I believe this? What about this resonates with me? And if this is something I want to continue with, right? Like how is it that I want to implement it into my life? What part of this highway do I want to travel down? Right? What parts of this resonate with my soul and what parts of this like don't make sense to me, right? Just really inviting in that conscious curiosity.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like it's tricky because like when we're doing those dopamine scrolls, right, we're in this space where we're trying not to think. So we have to like invite in consciously being aware while also being in a space of I don't want to think right now, but I need to also be mindful of what it is I'm looking at. It's an added layer I feel like we have to add to that. And also thinking about, like, we're talking about the algorithm, right? We train this algorithm to our values, but what happens when we decide to change our values? What happens when we decide to change these patterns? And yet our algorithms on all of these things are all set to this older version of us. And I feel like we have to be aware of, like, how do we want to change that? How do we have to literally maybe refresh the account? Like, I don't know, there's something you have to do to reset that because if you're changing, then you need to also make sure all of these digital elements, their algorithms are being shifted as well, so you're not falling back into old patterns because of this voice box that we're all believing because we're being, hearing it repeatedly. It's
I mean,
interesting.
wholeheartedly, like the brain is essentially like the algorithm was created in a way to mimic the human brain, right? And so what changes us as humans? What changes these pathways? Well, they're large experiences, they're meaningful experiences, they're things that hit us dramatically, right? And cause us to question the way that we've been living life, right? When people change their religions or change their political stance or, you change these dynamic things about it. Well, what sparked that? It's usually a new experience that's full of meaning for that person individually that caused them to have an inspiration of curiosity and to catapult that new thought pattern, right? Typically, we're going to be stuck in these thought pattern ruts until we find that reframe, until we allow ourselves to move into that reframe. And that reframe is generally sparked by an emotion, right?
Yes. Emotions and how they are connected to everything. It's and that dives into a whole other subject on like how do you begin to become aware of like your emotions and your emotional state while you're watching all of these things that you're consuming on a daily basis. And that's a whole job in and of itself. But in regards to comparison, right, how do you feel is the best way to be involved in the social world without drowning in comparison? Like, what would you recommend from your perspective?
Oh, that's such a rich and beautiful question, right? Because we're now like so exposed to what we perceive as the inner workings of other people's lives. And there's like this constant comparison that's happening in every aspect of our lives. But I really do personally, right, agree with you that that comparison is the thief of joy, right? And so it really takes that conscientious release of other people's perceptions, right? Of allowing yourself to live your life unencumbered by the judgments of others, right? Knowing that their path will be separate than yours, and that's okay. So it comes with like a great deal of self-soothing, right? Allowing your path, which is meant to be different, right? To be different and to be okay with that, right? Like for some reason we all tend to have this like grass is greener on the other side complex where we look at someone else's life and we're just like, oh, that's so much better than what I'm doing here. Or if I could be this way, if I could do this thing, right? If I was different in this specific way, things would be so much easier than me. But it throws me back into that quote of like, if we judge a fish's ability to judge a tree, right, we will never find out that this fish is a good swimmer. And that's not the exact quote, but essentially, it's like when we're looking at other people's strengths and comparing ourselves to them, we're overlooking our strength, we're overlooking our purpose. So like giving yourself permission to stay in your own lane and allowing that to be enough, right? Like there are so many different types of people here that we don't need two of that person, right? We need you. We need what you're bringing. And until you have the courage to step into that path, the world is lacking that gift that you have, right? And you owe it to the world to share that authentic piece of self with the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's beautiful. It's like what I'm hearing in that is it's you really have to develop like your self-worth and to see the beauty of yourself. And that can be really hard when you're in a society again with all the comparison and everything. So it's like you got to make sure you have enough quality friends and family around you that who can reflect that back to you if you need help with that, because it's like we don't see ourselves, right?
Mhm.
So it's like you have to love yourself in order to be strong in today's environment. And how do you do that? You need support. And I think a lot of people need support when it comes to that. Like obviously most of that journey's done for yourself to love yourself. But it's super helpful to have people who can reflect back to you. Like, wow, look at how you do this. Like you do that all the time. You're amazing at that. So everybody should just hire you and you can help reflect them their own magic back to them because that's what you do. But
Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate that.
yeah, it's like how do we learn to love ourselves? This is a whole other tangent. Started
No, it is.
a
It's
ton
really
in
the
space.
question of our life. Like, how can I release these preconceived notions I have of myself and allow myself to become the person I'm meant to be? Right. While we're trapped in that comparison, we're also like held away, compartmentalized away from the version of ourselves that we're meant to become, right? We can only really step into the energy of who we're meant to be when we release the expectation that we're going to be someone else.
True, true. Here, here. We have to release the expectations of others also on ourselves. Yeah. Because a lot of
Mhm.
people, that's another aspect. Like, there's not just what society expects of us, but also of what family members expect of us, or maybe certain friend groups we grew up in, and we don't even realize how those connections are also holding us back to old versions of ourselves. And it doesn't mean that all of those bridges have to burn, but I feel like it also means we have to take a look at them and be like, okay, which ones are going to support me as I'm in my next evolution or, in this step of loving myself or stepping into who I am authentically and having people who support me in that.
Yeah,
Would you?
wholeheartedly. Like if we're on the hero's journey, right, then like a part of our path here is to fight for what we believe in. And so many of us are fighting for a castle that isn't even ours. We're looking at the beliefs that were handed down upon us. We're looking at the societal expectations, and we're saying, this is the box that I am defending without ever questioning, is this my path? Is this my temple? Is this my truth? Right? We're just showing up for this fight that isn't even our fight. And I think that along the hero's journey, the journey truly starts when you start to release those beliefs that were given to you by the king and queen of the castle, right? And you start out in truth, right? You look for your own temple, you look for your own truth. You have your own experiences that define what you believe in and what you're fighting for. And so, like, I think so many of us have difficulty even initially starting the hero's journey because we're so used to playing side characters for everyone else's expectations in our life and really giving yourself that permission to put down the sword, right? To say, this is not mine. I will no longer be fighting for this.
And what is some advice you would give somebody who's about to step onto their own hero's journey to be in their most authentic version of themselves? What would you say is the first few steps if you were in that position?
That's a really beautiful question. Um, I think what's really coming to mind is take it a step at a time, right? Like the journey is long. It's one of those things that's a marathon, not a sprint. And so maybe it starts with questioning, right? It's not all going to happen immediately and with full force, right? The journey might involve you going back to the castle, right? Recognizing again it's not for you, and then moving forward again, right? Like your path is your own, and to allow yourself to have those experiences along the path with curiosity and compassion, right?
That's beautiful. Curiosity and compassion. Um, and what comes to mind, it's like all of these things that accumulate in our lives to look back at them and look at. It's all connected.
It's all connected. It really is. It really
Connected
is.
in the tapestry of life. All of these weird little things that seem like they're totally separate and independent from each other. And you look back and you're like, oh, look at that constellation.
100%. Like, you know, as we're talking about the hero's journey, and what it's bringing up to me is the procession of the tarot, right? Where we're literally watching the hero's journey unfold. And what I'm noticing about that is that like the book of tarot is actually an like what is this word? Um, it's an un it's a book that is not bound, unbound book.
Okay.
Where like the pieces of the puzzle are meant to fall in a different order for everyone else. So like every single piece of this puzzle defines a part of that journey, right? And so the pieces of this puzzle are things like, like the high priestess looking within, trusting that you have your own knowledge, like analyzing the systems of nurturing and the patriarchy that like impact your life, analyzing your belief systems like the Hierophant, and choosing to trust yourself and your own belief systems, allowing in love, allowing in other teachers, analyzing what justice is and allowing yourself to redefine that, and just truly moving through like the steps of the tarot at your own pace, knowing that they'll be popping up for you when you're ready to learn that lesson. And when they pop up, that we're allowed to look at that with curiosity, right? And we're allowed to know that like this book is not meant to follow a processional order.
I love that. And I'm just thinking as you're talking about this, I'm like, this one day tarot will be adopted into all of psychology because what is tarot? It's simply you diving into your own psyche through these different signposts represented by the cards, right? And you look at
So this
them.
is gonna blow your minds, but tarot is already incorporated into psychology
Is it?
through yeah,
Tell me more.
like not so straightforward as that, but Carl Jung uses archetypes, right, to analyze the human psyche. And tarot is essentially looking at a group of archetypes and asking yourself, how do I fit into this archetype?
Yeah.
And what is this archetype trying to share with my life?
Yeah.
And so, at least in the therapeutic space, I'm commonly using tarot as a reflection of where we are in the human psyche and where we are in that journey to self-enlightenment, which Carl Jung would be calling like the unconsciousness, right? The human collective. Like, how do I fit? Where is my archetype in this larger collective?
Yeah.
It
I
is
think
all
that makes sense.
connected.
It's all
Yeah.
well, I'm just thinking like literally people using the cards even. Like obviously the hero's journey has existed outside of tarot, for them to actually use the cards to be able to be like, okay, what does this justice mean to me in this moment? What is it that I need from this? Like it's really like a self-inquiry and connecting to your intuition and your own subconscious to like connect dots. And yeah, it's such a powerful tool. And I know a lot of people think it's like it can be gateways to evil, but it's just you accessing your own subconscious thoughts and helping you better understand yourself. But
100%. I don't um I'm gonna go ahead and say it here, but there's actually this incredible book. It's called Tarot for Change. I think it's by I don't know the author right off the bat, but
okay.
it's a psychotherapist who walks through each of the cards in the tarot and gives like psychological perspective on it, feedback, interventions, right, to help you further explore your own human psyche through the lens of psychology as
That's
it pertains
amazing.
to tarot. Yeah.
Wow. That's a cool book. We're gonna make like an Amazon like storefront and we're gonna put that on there because that sounds
Jessica
like
Dorr is the name. It took
just
me a
a
minute for it to come up in the brain space, right?
little processing delay. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
I feel that. Yeah, that sounds like an amazing book. And for people who are fascinated with spirituality and bridging the gap between, science and spirituality, I feel like that would be a really cool book to get into. I'm going to look into that.
I highly recommend it. It's a great book. So,
Oh,
it offers a lot of introspective questions for each piece of the tarot for you to kind of look within, look at what part of this journey is bringing up for you, and like kind of analyzing it with your own life space to see how it resonates. A lot of what we've been talking about here, I actually get a lot of my therapeutic influence from this exploration of what does tarot look like in the therapeutic space and how do we integrate these archetypes into our own reflective spaces.
yeah, I feel like there's something when that in the future for you to write about. Actually, I think I remember that might be a thing. So, yes, I had that just pop into my brain as like a vision. So, there's confirmation for you about that.
Thank you. I accept. It's been there. It's been there. So I'm waiting for the aligned action to materialize.
Here's a little side note from the universe that this is a thing for you. And while we're talking about books on tarot, this isn't as epic. I mean, it's not that it's not as epic, it's just a different version of epic. For what you're referencing, this is just if somebody's like interested in learning about tarot and they want it to be like a funny, sarcastic, less serious version, this like what the fuck is tarot book is incredible
Did I
by
give you that book?
no. Do you love this book too?
I do love that book. It is so approachable.
Yeah,
It's so
Baccara
approachable.
Winter? Baccara Winter. It's so good because if you're like, I don't know anything about tarot, and this What the Fuck is Tarot book is amazing because she just gives like realistic. modern day examples to the book in really funny ways. And so that's one I would recommend. So I'm happy you love it too. It's great
I
one.
second that recommendation. I saw the book and I was like, did you get that for me? Because I know I've gifted it to a couple of friends in the past. I actually really, really love that one.
I could see
Super
this.
approachable.
Awesome. Yes. So another tarot book that is like just a different version of Epic. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Well, we have discussed quite a large array of things here today. Is there anything else that you feel coming up that you want to touch on or share or speak to before we start to wrap this beautiful conversation up?
Well, I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity to share this space. I had a lot of fun reflecting with you, right, on all the different life experiences that just create this human existence. And it was a really beautiful space. So thank you so much for creating this. Thank you for your leadership and guidance through today's conversation. Um, and that's really all I have to contribute is I'm just very grateful for this opportunity to have such a beautiful conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you as well for your purity of spirit and your radical choosing of authenticity and how to express that from a loving, compassionate, and curious space. Um, I also wanted to, what was it? My final question to you, I guess, to leave for everybody who's listening or watching this is what would be your final thoughts or advice on somebody who is currently looking on how to recreate their life right now? They're feeling really stuck and really stagnant, and they know that there's a big change coming for them, but they don't know what to step into or what actions to take to start kind of helping create that shift. What advice would you give?
Um, Thank you for asking, right? I do feel like my standard response here is having compassion with the process. But I also think that one of the kindest things you can do for yourself is invite in another perspective, right? So whether this is reaching out to a trusted friend, right, a therapist, seeking an intuitive coach, seeking nature, right? Like reading a book that feels really wholesome, like The Inner Work was really transformative for me, by Matt and Ash, TikTok trends, right? Um, I really think that that invitation of a new perspective to get yourself out of the current space you're occupying, to allow that space to not become your home and to just allow it to be a current resting space is the kindest thing you can do to navigate this. One of the fallacies of the human brain is that as we are experiencing something, we believe that something will last forever even if we're very intelligent, very emotionally aware humans, right? That brain has that way of convincing us that this temporary space is now our permanent home. And so, my number one recommendation to anyone who is struggling in that space is to give yourself as many reminders as possible that this space is not your home. This is a temporary resting place meant to jar your experience, to bring you to a new resolution, to a new place of being, and that we can't stay here. We can't live here. Rest here if you need to. Take what you need to out of this hermit mode, reflect, give back to yourself. But allow yourself to move forward and to invite in other experiences if that's what it takes.
Beautiful. I think that's excellent advice. Excellent. Wonderful. Okay. So, on that note, for everybody, now you know Jamie Nelson, the magical, wonderful human being here to help you through your emotional journey and authentic self. We're gonna put all the links below where you can connect and, follow her and see what she's up to and what she's offering. Highly recommend. I'm biased, but she's also just amazing, as you can tell. So there is that, and look forward to future talks. And there's going to be lots more that come through. And yeah, thank you for being here and sharing all of your magic and wisdom. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to anyone who's listened. Just sharing these final words that you are worth the change. If you are attracted to a conversation about the void, you are not alone. Um, and so just sending love and positivity to anyone out there who might be in this space, with that final encouragement that the space does shift. It gets better, it gets brighter.
Yes. And it's coming from people who've been living in the void for a long time. I love that. Yes. You're not
Okay,
alone.
well, thank you so much, Sarah. This was a
Thank
wonderful
you.
time. I appreciate the conversation very much.
Likewise, and I think that a lot of people are going to resonate with this, and so I'm excited to hear. So if this has impacted you and you have anything you want to share, please do comment and share this. And if you like this conversation and you like what's being offered here, to make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all of the things that everybody says all the time, but it's still important. So one, you can listen to more of this content, and two, it also supports the channel and the podcast. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you here again next week. And have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.